1 trillion euros a year, and it will be on and on and on and going up. Essentially to do what? To buy American weapons. To do what? Prepare the war against Russia. And who profits from all this? Twice. The Americans arm the Europeans, and the American industrial military complex makes a lot of money out of this toothless chihuahuas. They are going to organize and prepare the war against Russia. And the US is leading from behind, but far away, protected by the Atlantic Ocean. Does that remind anybody of World War I and World War II? Yes, it does, because it's the same shit.
NATO's 5 GDP defense target by 2035 could push EU military spending over $900 billion annually, largely to buy U.S. weapons aimed at deterring Russia. This mirrors historical patterns where the U.S. profits from arming allies while staying geographically insulated.
The Russians are preparing themselves for this war. It's not what's going on in Ukraine now. This is the starter. The Russians are managing the starter at the moment, the Russian way, as we all know. If you understand the Russian mentality, you know that this is the way that they do wars. Attrition, little by little. It's not about conquering territory. If you conquer territory, excellent. Demilitarization, which is working. And then long-term, which is be much more complicated, denazification. But for that, they need a new government in Kiev. They are following the machinations of the empire and the Brits. And now, especially with being openly leaked that the next leader of Ukraine is going to be Zaluzhny. We knew that a year and a half ago that it was Zaluzhny, because he left Kiev. He became ambassador of Ukraine in London, where he's being trained, I would say 10 hours a day at least, day after day, by MI6 to be their man in Kiev. Everybody knew that. It's ridiculous. Now it's in the open, because now it's even published by American mainstream media. So we all know where this is going. And obviously the Russians know better than anybody where this is going. So, brings us back to the question. Once again, Nima, and this is the question of the war. When will the Russians stop? Where and how? We still don't know. And everybody that says he knows, he doesn't know what he's talking about. The only one who knows is Vladimir Putin. Maybe Gerasimov maybe doesn't know. Shoigu doesn't know. Medvedev doesn't know. The whole Supreme Council still doesn't know. The final decision is the big bear. And of course, the pressure will mount, because then, okay, we crossed the Dnieper. We keep going. Yes, we keep going. All the way to Odessa. Why not? Let's go all the way to Odessa. Especially now that after Odessa, Transnistria. So, you know, all the doors will be open, right? But at the same time, the Russians are looking at how direct attacks inside the Russian Federation are bound to increase sooner rather than later. That's where these NATO surveillance planes over Crimea day after day for a few weeks now, that's where they fit in. They are going to come up with something in Crimea, and it's going to be a terror attack, most probably.
That's a serious claim, and if true, it points to an extremely dangerous shift. Crimea has always been a red line for Russia. A terror-style provocation there could force Moscow into abandoning its calibrated approach, with consequences that ripple across Europe and beyond.
How is Russia going to react to that? This gradualist approach is reaching the limits, right? What our friends in Moscow, businessmen, I've been hearing from them for 2.5 years now, this almost war cannot be an almost war anymore.
That's the tension many analysts are grappling with. The gray zone is shrinking. The distinction between a special operation and a full-scale war is becoming meaningless. The longer that line blurs, the more unpredictable the eventual escalation becomes.
This transition from SMO to counter-terrorist operations, CTO, it's not announced yet. It's forming. What is being formed is something like this, but it's not there yet, which should be for a while now. This is a counter-terrorist operation. The problem is, if you get the heads of the terrorist snake, who's going to be next? And that explains why the Russians are still refraining from Oreshniking Bankova in Kiev, right? Okay, who's going to be next? And we don't want Zaluzhny. Zaluzhny is the Brits' man, and Britain is officially at war against Russia. Whichever way you try to describe it, London is at war with Moscow.
The Ukraine war remains a slow attrition campaign, with Russia advancing through demilitarization. Denazification depends on RusiaUkraineConflict. Rumors persist about Zaluzhny, now ambassador to the UK, as a British-backed successor. NATO's surveillance over Crimea and possible terror acts blur the line between a special military operation and full-scale war.
So all these variables are playing every day, but we already know the long picture, what's going to be. This NATO war against Russia in 5 years, roughly. So the Russians have to calculate everything towards, okay, what's going to happen within these next 5 years? And the gradualist approach coming to the point when NATO finally declares war on Russia, Russia can destroy all major NATO basic nodes in half an hour.
Russia may be preparing for a NATO confrontation by 20,292,030. While Western intelligence warns of a possible attack within 5 years, Russia asserts it can rapidly neutralize key NATO assets if provoked. Moscow follows a cautious long-term strategy to avoid premature escalation.
Problem is, Russia won't be provoked. Look, they were provoked with an attack on 1/3 of their nuclear strategic assets, and they did not respond accordingly. They are always postponing the response because when the real response comes, it's going to be something off.
Despite attacks on strategic assets, Russia delays retaliation to avoid catastrophic escalation. This restraint aligns with a strategy of waiting for the right moment to deliver a decisive blow, rather than rushing into all-out war.
Heard that. Coup de grâce, as we say here in France. You know, the coup that destroys your enemy for good. So it's fascinating to see, but when you understand the Russian mentality, you understand this waiting and preparing and not overreacting. And it's very hard for many of us, especially all of us who are products of the West, to understand that. But after a while, when you understand how they think, it makes sense from their point of view, totally. And the way that, why this is not a war. No, it's just a military operation, a police operation. And now a police operation mixed with a counter-terrorist against a bunch of terrorists. The real war is not this one. The real war is becoming, we have to be prepared for that one.
Russia's attritional mindset frames the Ukraine war as evolving from a policing action to counter-terrorism, with the real conflict looming against NATO. This long-term strategic logic, hard for Western audiences to grasp, prioritizes endurance over immediate victories.
This one is easy. We can manage, as they are managing, right? But as you said, it's getting more and more dangerous by the minute, because there will be, I would say, a string of escalations from now on. There's no question about that. Especially when you have in power in NATO, in the UK, in so-called political leaderships of different NATO nations, and in Brussels, people of this quality, and now I'm being diplomatic, they don't even qualify as having any quality.
This criticism
Escalation is inevitable due to weak leadership across NATO capitals. As drone warfare and airstrikes increase, Russia shifts from the easy phase to preparing for a far more dangerous confrontation.
The problem is if the cost for the Russian civilian population starts to become very, very high. Don't forget, for the moment, the cost in terms of Russian casualties, it's already very, very high. And this is a subject that is extremely sensitive to discuss when you are in Russia. I saw that for myself, and in many episodes, I was trying to write something or publish something that I knew, oh no, this is a red line, because it would be considered an attack on national security. And I understand their motivations, and I understand their logic, of course. But for the moment, the Kremlin judges that the price being paid by the Russian military, okay, I'm talking about military casualties, is acceptable. And to put it bluntly, the price being paid by the Russian civilian population is acceptable. But if this goes over a red line that none of us know where it is.
That's the most unsettling part of this whole equation. The red lines exist, but they're undefined, and they live in one man's head. That kind of ambiguity in nuclear geopolitics is a recipe for unintended disaster.
It's probably in Putin's mind. You know, there's got to be a figure, a number somewhere, you know. Then all bets are off. We're not there yet. But just to give an example, imagine a false flag in Moscow with lots of civilian casualties in the capital. We are on the way to this ultra red line, right? If we have something like this, the people who ordered this false flag, they better start running now. But we're not there yet. So this calibration game is very complex for Putin and the Security Council. On the other side, we know now there are no rules. When you have the Chancellor of Germany openly calling to strike Russian Federation assets inside Russia, this is already a declaration of war by itself. And these stupid generals and the head of NATO, you name it. They are losing, well, they never had any measure. But this is what happens, Nima, when you launch a military operation without thinking of possible outcomes. And after a little over 3 years, you stare humiliation in your face, but utter, thorough humiliation. The whole NATO machine humiliated by Russia. You lose any inkling of rational thought that you may have already had in the past, and you didn't, because you launched this operation against Russia in the first place, and you were sure that you were going to win in 3 months. How stupid can these people be? Well, they are that stupid, even more. And now it's desperation. And of course, Trump is smart enough as a businessman he found his way out already. This is not my war. This war is from the Autopan administration that came before me, and now it's your war, Europeans. You want to fight your war? Okay, buy all our weapons. That's it. I'll sell everything that you want. That's it. So the US is out, technically, right? It's a very smart way of dealing with it. And of course, he sets up the Europeans for a fall even more catastrophic than before. Each day that passes, the European fall will be even more catastrophic. And they don't see it, Nima, which is, gosh, they cannot see it. They cannot see it. They are deaf, dumb, blind, and stupid enough not to see that they are now being set up. Now that defeat is inevitable, they are being set up for anything that happens, including this famous war against Russia in 2030.
That
Russian military losses near 1 million deemed acceptable so far. But rising civilian tolls like possible false flag events in Moscow could cross undefined red lines, risking nuclear ambiguity. NATO's failures fuel desperation, while Trump distances the U.S., pushes arms sales, and leaves Europe on a path toward inevitable defeat by 2030.